In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a few tips and tricks as well as things I wish I knew before playing Black Ops 6 Zombies. Whether you're new to the mode or maybe you've played before, hopefully there'll be something in this video for you. Now before we jump into any games, we're first going to take a look at the augment system. These are unlockable upgrades we can apply to all perks, field upgrades and ammo mods. So before you even go into your first game, I'd recommend going into the weapons tab, go into augments, research, and then select the tree you want to start researching first. Now that we've done that, any XP that we earn going into our first game will be put towards augments, which are a great start for new players. If you do happen to be a newcomer to zombies, then at first, not all skill trees will be available for you to unlock, but as you complete research on more augments, other trees will become available. If you are someone that already has a few levels to your name, then you'll also want to start by building a loadout. And the main focus here is selecting a different optic. And that's because this year, each optic has its own set of reticle challenges which give a small amount of XP for completing. So in the early days, while we're getting kills on zombies, this will be getting us some extra XP. Anyway, let's go into a game now, and after a few rounds, you'll notice the elites start dropping something called a loot key. And these can range from green being the least rare, to blue, purple, and legendary being the rarest. And depending on how rare the key is that you've picked up, you'll be getting yourself some better loot. Now you may be wondering how we actually get access to this loot. Well, on Liberty Falls that comes in the form of a vault, and on Terminus that comes in the form of the armory. Now the vault in Liberty Falls does actually require a code to unlock, and to get this code we can find 3 sticky notes around the map. The first is in the bank itself, the second's in the bowling alley, and the third is in the comic book store. Once we're in the vault, we'll be able to use the loot keys to open certain deposit boxes. And like we mentioned before, depending on what rarity key you have, the better the loot you will get. And at legendary rarity, this can pair with free wonder weapon, free perks, self revives, and even gold rarity weapons. Which leads us on to our next tip, being that if you already have or don't want the reward you have, you can actually drop it instead of just leaving it in the box. And this way, the rewards you get can be of use to your teammates. Staying on Liberty Falls, and you may already know that you can shoot 5 pairs of shoes around the map to go into a bowling Easter egg, but what you may not know is that you can actually enter it several times in one game. To do this, after you've done the Easter egg the first time, after a few rounds, another pair of shoes will appear in the toilet in this window. And like we did the first time round, if we shoot them, it'll put us back into the bowling lanes. Just like with the loot keys, depending on the performance in the bowling lanes, you'll be able to get yourself gold weapons, wonder weapons, and perks. And as a little bonus tip, you may not know that there's also a Dark Ops challenge to get 300 score. If you do this, you'll unlock a calling card and some extra XP. Moving on next, when you're buying perks, you may notice that the drinking animation actually stops you from doing certain things. But there is actually a way you can skip the animation, and it's incredibly easy. All you have to do is go up to the perk machine, melee, and press your interact at the same time to buy the perk. And you'll notice that the melee animation takes priority, which is much quicker than the drinking animation, so you pretty much instantly get the perk. You may have seen smoke grenades in zombies and wondered what they can actually be used for, as when you actually throw them, it doesn't create a smoke screen between you and the zombies, they just run through it and come straight after you. But as it turns out, we've actually all been using the smoke grenades wrong. What we were meant to be doing is throwing the smoke grenade and running to where the grenade actually lands, as it creates a small ring, and you'll notice when you stood inside it, all the zombies will ignore you. This is a slight callback to the fan favourite perk of Ultra Raid from Black Ops 2, and you can use it most effectively in solo Easter egg steps like the Valve step in Liberty Falls or the bomb defusal step in Terminus. You also may not know this, but there are several weapons that when you pack a punch in game they gain secret abilities, and this has actually allowed the return of the Mustang and Sally's under a different name. If you pack a punch the GS45 pistol, it'll turn into Sally and any bullets will explode on impact. And if you happen to get them akimbo and pack a punch, then you get Sally and Fourth, which again, both bullets explode on impact. If you put some hours into this game already, then you know how effective explosives are, and these are no different. But also, if you pack a punch the LR762 sniper rifle, then it will also get the same upgrade where its bullets explode on impact. The GS45 is definitely the better of the two, but they both perform well up to decently high rounds. But it's important that if you plan on using either of them, PhD flopper is a must. Earlier on in the video, we took a look at how we can customize our loadout, but as it turns out, there's a way you can bring several loadout weapons in, and it's in a feature that no one's really mentioned. Once you've leveled up your weapon and applied attachments to it, it'll create what's called a build. So when you're choosing your weapon and hovering over the weapon of choice, it'll show your build and any other blueprints you have unlocked. And as you can see, when we hover over each build or blueprint, in the bottom of the screen it says remove or set zombie build. And what will happen is, depending on what blueprint or build you set as your zombie build, when you go into a game and acquire the weapon via a wall buy or a mystery box, it'll give you your build that you selected rather than a weapon with a ton of random attachments. We also took a look at augments at the start of the video, and once you've got a few games under your belt, you'll notice that your tree will have finished. But once it does so, by default the game selects a random tree to start researching next. And this has put me in a few situations where I've earned a lot of XP in a game and it's gone towards a tree that I didn't even want to research. So make sure you're checking back into the research tab every few games to make sure this doesn't also happen to you. During the Terminus Easter egg, you'll get to a step where you have to pick up some node connectors from the shipwreck and you'll be put into a lockdown phase. And the room you're stuck in is quite quite small and restricted, but you can actually skip this step completely. If you go into this room with some shock sticks, when you pick up the node connector, the trapdoor will close. If you throw a shock stick to the left and to the right, the door will open back up and skip the lockdown completely. You may have noticed that while doing damage to certain elite zombies with certain ammo mods, an icon will pop up and the damage will actually be a little bit higher. This is because certain ammo mods are more effective on certain elite enemies. For example, Napalm Burst can do increased damage on Manglers and Abominations. Brain Rot will also do additional damage to Abominations. Shadow Rift and Deadwire will be effective on Amalgams. And with Deadwire and Napalm Burst, the damage can be further increased using augments. While Cryo Freeze only does additional damage to Vermin and Parasites, it can be used on the elites. And if you have the Big Game and Freezer Burn augments equipped, you'll be able to slow elite enemies and deal more damage while they're slowed. Staying on topic with elite enemies, Amalgams can actually heal themselves over time. If you don't deal any damage on them for a short amount of time, they'll be able to eat a zombie and basically heal themselves. It's very important to keep this in mind when you go into the first boss fight on Terminus, as Nathan already has a massive amount of health and letting him heal at all is just a major disruption. So make sure that if you're running away from any Amalgams or Nathan, you're at least backpedaling and shooting him and dealing some damage. Our next tip involves the use of the SAM trials, and you may be doing these to get some early loot. There are certain trials which you can cheat in a way, and the first is getting kills while crouched. Instead of doing this the normal way, you can actually crouch and use score streaks like a chopper gunner, and all the kills gained while in the chopper gunner will count towards the trial. You may also come across a trial that requires you to get kills using equipment, and the machine will spit out a few things you can use. But if it's super early on and you haven't collected much equipment yet, I'd definitely recommend picking up the combat axe out of the bunch that it does drop. This is because with each throw it can kill up to 5 or 6 zombies depending on how you've hoarded them, and it can also be infinitely used as the combat axe stays on the ground once you've thrown it. Speaking of equipment, if you're struggling to build anything because you have a lack of salvage, then one thing you can do to help this is putting a suppressor on your loadout weapon. As you may not know this, but it actually increases the chance to drop extra salvage. There are also several side Easter eggs you can do in each map that drop additional salvage, but we will be covering those in a future video, so make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss that. A few videos ago we took a look at how to build the Beam Smasher in Terminus, and if you're at such an early point in the game where you don't have the 5,000 points to bribe Peck, then the code to the computer is actually really easy to solve, and I'll show you how to do that now. The first thing you need to do is go around the map and find these 3 laptops, and when you interact with them they will show up with these symbols. Once you've interacted with the 3 laptops, head back to the computer and the symbols will show up on sticky notes, and these symbols will actually turn into numbers using the whiteboard at the back. We need to match the symbol to the whiteboard on the left, and once you find it, the first number will be on the left and the second number will be on the bottom. And once you've worked out what numbers X, Y, and Z are, we plug them into the equations on the right, and when you work out the equations you'll have your code. There is also several websites available that you can use to solve the code, and this is much quicker and will still save you your 5,000 points. And finally, if points are something you're struggling for, there are double points power-ups you can get for free on both maps. In Liberty Falls, this can be found outside the map on a water tower. If we throw a grenade, it'll explode and it'll give us a double points power-up. But if you're on Terminus, this can be found on the 3rd level in the biolab, and just next to the box location behind these white boxes you'll see the double points symbol. Shoot it and it'll give us the power-up. And as a little bonus tip, if you're playing multiplayer and you have the profit sharing gobblegum, do not sleep on this. Use it during a double points and you will see incredible success. Anyway, that's all the tips for now. If you found anything useful, make sure you drop a like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another video.